Hey everybody, welcome to episode 74 of Tactical Crouch. This is your Overwatch League Season 3 preview episode. I'm KickedTripod, joined of course by Yiska and Volamel. Before we get into it, just a quick reminder. Show is largely supported by our patrons and Twitch subscribers. If you like the show, want to support, want some cool perks, go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch and sign up for as little as $1 a month. As little as $1 a month, or subscribe right here on Twitch. Get some cool emotes. We got some game nights going on. All that good stuff. We're not gonna waste time on this, Yiska. We're just gonna jump right in. This episode.
Writing. I'm not doing anything.
This episode is brought to you by our patron producers, Battlecrab, Made, Pin, Lolshin, Charlie L, and Audio Compass. Thank you for your support. Let's get started. And before we do, it is important to mention that we do have a high noon fantasy league, a pick'em league. Did just go live, so we're going to be giving away prizes to the top 5 finishers for the season, so you can get that Yiscat mouse, or mouse pad, not mouse. Mouse would be sick. A Yiscat mouse.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, so you can go sign up for that at bit.ly/TCPpick'em, or just go to highnoon.gg, go to the featured league tab, and you'll see Tactical Crouch there in the featured leagues list, and then join the league. I think I'm going to wreck you both.
Probably.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna have the struggle with a lot of those is just maintenance. I have to do this anyways. Like, I'm already committed to doing predictions. It's just like finding the website and just like clicking it and just like remembering to do it every week. I'm not gonna lie. It's bad.
It's bad. Do you remember season 1 when we were when Roy was still doing that stuff with Winston's lab, and we were just like, we missed the cutoff. Can you add that in to that? Yeah, fucking unreal.
By like week 5, by like the middle of stage 2, it was just like, oh, I didn't do my predictions. And then if you didn't do your predictions, you just hoped that those matches that day were just like kind of close, and maybe there was an upset that nobody expected. Like, it was,
Yep,
that was rough.
Yeah, so come join that. That's gonna be fun. We're actually the second largest league out there right now, besides the official High Noon GG league.
Nice.
And there's like 7 or 8 Overwatch League teams that have leagues, so
very cool.
Go us, right?
Yes, very much.
Go us. Yeah, check that out. That's gonna be great. Power rankings. This is not a power ranking episode because Hero Pools kind of threw it to the wind a little bit.
A little bit.
And even then, I feel like our top 5s have been really similar to other people's top 5s. The justifications for those top 5s are probably very similar as well. So we were actually, the original plan was like, well, let's just finish it anyways and just pretend that Hero Pools doesn't exist for the moment, or try to factor that in, but only within the teams that we haven't talked about yet. And just kind of felt wrong. So, Yiska, I know you finished. You have your top 20 on GG Intel.
Yeah, I did those in, I think, between Christmas and New Year.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, let me be honest. From the information I know now, and
how different would they be though?
Even without the hero pool, I think I would move a bunch around in the middle, and also in the top. The scrim knowledge also would make me move that stuff a bunch around, but the hero pool devalues everything I did. Honestly, I think it's basically like when you do your power rankings list, you have different parameters, and you want to try to be as consistent as possible. So I had strength of players on paper, coaching staff, like travel schedule, all these things. Now, and like in a hierarchy of importance, and now Hero Pool comes in, and it asks flexibility of coaching staff and players, and I'm like, okay, this is the second most important thing this season. Everything else below it is now devalued because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would say, like the premier thing that I would have said that still remains the most important is like innate player strength, if you want.
Sure.
So like skill level of all players on the team.
Sure.
And then there's now flexibility, and it includes the coaching staff. So in that regard, like, of course, every other parameter moves down because of that in weights. And yeah, I think I would change a bunch around knowing what I know now.
I feel like a lot of yours were really early, where some of like the pretty big signings just hadn't even been announced yet, or haven't even been, hadn't happened yet. I feel like that would probably sway yours a whole lot more. I think if you like genuinely looked at those teams and viewed them through all those different lenses, I think yeah, the middle of the pack, you might move up or down teams like one or two spaces, but I don't think like a team just gets like shoots up to like contenders tier, you know what I mean, like an A tier or an S tier from like the bottom 5, right? Like I don't think you'll see like big swaps.
No, but I think
there are changes. One or two teams that I think are jumping 6, 7, 8 slots.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely have like 5 teams like this. No troll.
Oh yeah, I don't know about 5.
I'm pretty happy with mine.
But yeah. I think because we don't really, I think anybody who thinks that they know how hero pools are going to affect the Overwatch League without seeing it in practicality or just, selling some snake oil. I don't doubt that like there's sure. like, 3 different kind of philosophies on how hero pools are going to shake out, and one of them is probably mostly right. But I don't know. It's just it changes. I think it changes so much. It adds so much volatility to the hero or not the hero pools, the power rankings. So I think we'll just kind of have to see from there. But that's an update on the top 5. You can find Yiska and Volamel's power rankings pre-hero pools are they both on GG Intel?
No, Yiska's are completely on GG Intel. You can find mine on esports7.com.
Perfect. So you go find them there, and nobody cares about mine anyway. I'm just here for the discussion, so whatever. Yeah. Anyways. Feel good? Anything you guys want to add on power rankings?
I think we'll see. Maybe I'll have a Scrimbox power ranking there, and then it would power rankings week 1 as teams, as how I heard, teams entered into the thing. I'm not sure how good. Okay, here's the thing.
You're playing
ESPN,
with dark magics.
ESPN has this poll of coaches, and they're just like asking around, and they need to, like, some of these teams have never scrimmed each other, haven't touched any parts other than in ranked games, like since last season, right? So how would they know? So in that regard, I think there's some inaccuracy going, also seeing the result. But of course, like the one that I would be able to provide is just like really a question of how good is my bullshit filter? Because I can tell you, Scrimmeth is definitely happening again. Like today was just mind blowing how it's like, how I had this esports fallacy where it's like Scrimmeth, the sum of both win rates that a team gives you against the other will always exceed 120%. It's 140% now, dude.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get it's okay, like, to see like a slight tendency, like 60-40 in either case, like that's your personal bias. How do you say you're stomping scrims against someone and then the other one says they're stomping as well? What?
Everybody's stomping. Everybody's winning all the time.
Everyone's stomping, dude.
So
this
it,
is so
it
good.
has to be one. Like it has to be one of two things, right? It either has to be one person is just lying, right? Because at the end,
Could be.
there's like actual. We won the map, we lost the map. So if you
Yeah.
look at scrim results as winning maps and losing maps, somebody's lying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they are incredibly biased. But most coaches we've had on the show and we've met aren't these types of coaches to just be like, we won 30%, but it felt like we won 70%, and I'm not checking any of that. Whereas more than likely, it seems like we're really working on this, and I'm watching this, and when we're doing this strategy, or we're using these players, or this thing, like I feel really good about the performance, and therefore we win.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling it might be more of the latter.
Yeah. I would say there are two coaches that are very interesting in the sense that they seem to lowball their win rate. They seem to be feeling worse about the performance than
Who?
it actually is. I can't say that. But yeah, that bias, like towards your own shortcomings, also exists. That's an interesting revelation for me. And those, I guess I can say that those are analysts. So I think it's interesting how these things work. Of course, what might also be happening is we've had wild meta switches in the scrims because of the PTR changes and everything. So I'm not necessarily asking them on the same day, though I struggle to see how it would change this drastically within a week, maybe. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how this shakes out. Again, I'll have a Scrimbuck Stock Exchange ready on that, trying to like distort reality to the point of where I'm not getting anyone in trouble, but we'll see.
It's always the magic.
Yeah.
Of the stocks. Stonks.
Lol. All right. Fair enough. Anyways, that's the update on our power rankings. Basically, it's a big old go f yourself. You'll figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
If they didn't mean
we'll see when the time
anything,
comes.
if they didn't mean anything before hero pools,
Oh yeah.
now they
you
definitely
certainly
don't mean anything
Yeah.
now.
Oh.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. Couple last minute changes to not really changes. These are things that I think have largely been set in stone for a while now. But couple of public changes to Overwatch League rosters as we're going into season 3. First and foremost, the Atlanta Reign have added Kodak and Fire to the roster as supports. Puts the roster as 12 as Sephi promised on our episode with him earlier this offseason. And it's perfectly balanced. Each position has a backup. 3
As all things should.
Yeah, it's right there. Kodak, of course, started off last season with the Atlanta Reign before leaving the team to play on Atlanta Academy instead. So let's talk about Kodak first. Joe, I want to ask you about this a little bit. I feel like you're more of the NA Contenders watcher guy.
I feel like I can speak on Kodak.
Yeah.
I don't think
so
he's super unknown.
The big idea is that on the Atlanta Reign last year, if I'm understanding this correctly, on Atlanta Reign last year, he was just kind of warming up the bench. Dogman was largely taking most of the play time, and not taking, but earning, whatever you want to say. He was playing the most out of it, and Kodak came to a mutual decision with the Atlanta Reign to go play for Atlanta Academy. He stayed with the Atlanta Reign team throughout his stint with the Academy. Yeah, I think that's one of the big thing. Brad came out and said, like, hey, he's still very much part of the team. We just want him to get more play time. We want him to continue to grow as a player, to play at the Overwatch League level, and warming the bench probably isn't a winning situation for either us or Kodak.
Yep.
So, what do you think, based on, I think, his experience in Contenders and just overall? Is this someone who's coming back and is going to make an impact on the Atlanta roster this year, or is this, I think, something maybe, is he just going to come back and ride the bench again?
I think for most deep rosters, I think with teams that actually do have a bench, there is going to be lull periods for even just starters. If hero pools are going to be as drastic as some people claim they should be, there's a good chance that having your second string flex support, your second string main tank, whatever it might be, they're going to get ahead of the game in terms of practice, which should net them starting positions in almost a rotational way, right? If things don't turn out to be as drastic as what people say they should be in regards to hero pools, there's a good chance that Kodak still sees a bit of bench time. But there again, we can't sleep on the fact that travel is quite stressful. Travel's hard to do. It's not, we're not built to be on the move that often, and people are going to suffer because of it, in terms of their play, in terms of the level that they can bring. So if you have somebody that's fresh, somebody that is, sharing scrim time as much as, you can allot them, they should move up. I think this is the season to build out your roster. I think it's good in general. It's a good safety measure to kind of keep your team able to fill positions. We saw teams even last year, main tanks having to go back to Korea for XYZ reason. DPS, weren't able to play because of the stress of, stage time, and had to leave. And the teams didn't have, replacements. Now that is kind of a guarantee almost that that's going to happen. And having a substitute and incorporating them and building a system to actually incorporate them, which it sounds like what is exactly what Atlanta has done. Seppi's words. I think this is good overall. I think teams that have built out their rosters will probably do well. I tried to incorporate that in my power rankings, and I think Kodak is definitely good enough to play. But it's how they incorporate him. It's in same goes with Fire, and obviously that's kind of the logical next step. Fire's very, very talented, and so is Kodak. So I think this is the season to have a bench player, to have a system in place to actually incorporate them in either now or in the future, and they should see results based on that. They should see positive increases.
Fair. Yiska, what do you think? I mean, is this, I tend to feel like there's the reactions to this are kind of polarized in the sense that either like, great, we have depth here, Dogman and Masa are still going to just, be the go-to starting, supports for the raid. But I also have other people saying that these are both really good supports, and on certain heroes, especially like, I don't know how Dogman's Moira is. Right? I don't like.
Actually, pretty good.
It is good.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I have no idea. I haven't watched
Probably
a whole lot of it.
Maybe his best hero, which is always funny. Like whenever Dogman says he hates something, he's probably very good at it. It's like just like the formula that has been popping up with him. It's kind of weird how like usually it's the other way around. Like when I teach a child and they're like, I hate division, it's like, yeah, because you're not good at it. But for him, it seems to be the other way around.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is that? I mean, is he good enough on Moira, Zen, and Ana? Or do you think it's more of a map pick, or do you think it's just simply backup and who's feeling better on that day, or planned rest?
I think teams would be well advised to sort of specialize part of their players. also there's like when Zephy was here, he was talking about a lot about like team chemistry and like having players in whatever. I feel like the prohibitive part, and that sort of seeped through last season, that Dako and Kodak couldn't coexist, and I'm not necessarily sure that was actually on Kodak. And again, this is not me leaking any new juice. That's just like repeating what happened. I can already see the Reddit clip of this. I'm not leaking anything. That's just like my recollection of how this was, how this was presented. And I think we could be seeing like a specialization maybe of Kodak in that regard. Sure. I also think he wasn't much worse than Dogman when he was actually playing. So it's okay. If you look at the Atlanta roster, I think a lot of people would say that flex support is probably their starting flex support would probably be considered one of the first roles to be upgraded by a better or someone else. Mm-hmm. I think that's the general. That's the temperature I get from the community. I think that might be true, but it's also a thing of availability. And honestly, there aren't that many flex supports outside of Overwatch League that deserve it more than, or would be better than Kodak. And by the way, this also extends to Crimzo. So I think this is a fine pickup, knowing that like just how he works in that environment. I think you're also well advised to have people with like a certain attitude towards their profession, to have them in the team, especially when travel starts, when volatility starts. So like all I've heard of Kodak in terms of like personal relationships is strictly positive. Yep. So I don't mind that pickup at all.
Yeah. Do you think a 12-person roster is more important and impactful now that we're in hero pools? Do you think that'll...
I think it, and I said this going into the preseason, I was skeptical when everybody was saying it's not feasible, right? It's not financially sustainable to be able to have this kind of roster, and I totally agree with that. But I think it's primarily based on the efficiency. Do you have a strong coaching staff that has a structure in mind to incorporate these players? If so, then yes. If you can afford it, great. If you have the budget for it, go for it. As long as that coaching and that structure is in place, I think it's very efficient to be able to do this. And if you have the right players, if you have the right eyes on those players and they meet those metrics, then great, bring them in. But if you are not, and you don't have, your coaching staff doesn't feel comfortable trying to integrate all these players into a practice system, then don't. It's probably not worth it, because you're going to get people like they did in season 1, unhappy with where they're at and kind of just stuck in a contract. Like, I don't want to be here. I'm getting paid great, but I don't, we're not even being used. That doesn't feel good. And I think that's what people like Taimu, people like Flower, a lot of the older kind of the old guard almost have gone back to contenders to at least get some play time, to keep their wheels moving and to keep their stock at least at an average in the public eye. And we know that actually affects what teams and the decisions that they make. So I think that's overall a net positive. But to go back to the question, I think it comes back to, does it make sense for your team? I don't think it's just a broad sweeping answer. I do think this season in general, you need depth, but to go all the way to 12, I think that varies.
I think what is interesting though is, for instance, London across the preseason has been scrimming A and B team. Sure. So teams would literally like book scrims against London B or against London A. And those also, from what I understand, are quite different in quality. So it's interesting to see that this soul type of thing is happening again, but even to a further extent where it's like, and there's still substitutions between the squads happening and whatnot. It's like not that set in stone, but it's a interesting dynamic, and we will have to see how this turns out, because like the hard division. I will also say I think a lot of teams will start solidifying their roster. I think, for instance, for ATL, that's probably the case.
Sure.
Where they pretty much know their starters. And
of course. I think most teams probably have their starting rosters, but it's a marathon. It's not a race. Sure. And as long as, like I said, as long as the coaching staff has systems put in place to incorporate these bench players into the team, so you're not just like plugging in a new player that just has been grinding Sombra or been grinding Baptiste. That might be good on paper, but in practice, that's a brand new player to add to the system. But what I will say is it's very interesting to me that it's always been Korean teams that try this and find at least some success with it. We've seen it with London, Seoul. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but when you go to other esports like StarCraft, like League of Legends, that's a very normal thing.
Yes,
you have like a B team that is your dedicated practice partner. It's like, hey, it's almost like an underclassman. It's just like, hey, I need you to go do this for me. I need you to play this against me in this way in this specific time, so that I can get better. And by that, you kind of build social stock and you climb up the ladder that way. But
I'll even tell you, I think a player like Zephyr would be highly sought after in like, let's say he was as good in scrims
as people say.
As people say in like StarCraft, like that would be a baller practice partner. Whatever if he doesn't bring it on stage, but if you can have like your top players practice against a guy like that, that would be quite attractive to a lot of organizations back in the day. So I think that like in Brood War, there are legends about like some scrim gods that could never like bring it on the big stage, and that ultimately were like premier practice partners for the actual like bonjours and stuff. So I think it is an interesting part. Like we also see this like when we talked about Atlanta Academy with Zephy, and we talked about Sugar Free, where it's like, like he straight up says like, I'm not bringing him because I expect, like, I want to keep him warm so he can in 4 years play for me in the Overwatch League. It's like, I want to have him here because he's nuts and he helps my main team and the other players on his team in contenders grow. Yeah. Right. So that aspect certainly is part of it.
It opens up a whole broad question about how you can value contenders teams, and we kind of were talking about that pre-show, but I think there are like non-monetary values that are very valuable to teams that do have contenders teams that can get players earlier, can use it for scouting, but can also use it for genuine practice, like actual good practice partners that wouldn't be able to play in the Overwatch League anyways, right? Obviously, Sugar Free in 4 years' time might be a completely different person, but right now he's a great player and is going to challenge my main team much in the same way that an Overwatch League team would challenge them. Mm-hmm. So you kind of bypass these rules almost in practice, and I think that's valuable.
Yeah. So what about the Dallas Fuel? So the Dallas Fuel also made a new edition this past week. And up until now, we have kind of discussed and rated Dallas Fuel as incrementally improving because of Dohan DK. Now they add Crimzo to the list at flex support, and not behind, but with Unco on that team. And kind of the same conversation. Is this something, Fire and Kodak, maybe situational players, but definitely not clear-cut starters. What about Crimzo?
I think there's a world where that's a clear-cut starter.
Yes, I think he will start.
Yeah, I think so. I'm still not completely sold on the fact that Unco is completely washed up. He definitely has not looked like he did in the past.
Yeah,
but I think I need to see a little bit more before we completely sail on that ship. And if Crimzo starts for a majority of the season, I think there's a reason for that. I think that ship has sailed in. we're done here. That kind of discussion's over. If a a player who has a fantastic story, again, Envision got this kid off the ladder because he was just sick at Zen, and then just signed him. He was actually really good, pleasant to work with, absolute grinder, and can play Ana really, really well too. Like he's the Crusher 99 of the Overwatch League. Like obviously you can have multiple, but that's the kind of archetypal story that Crimzo has. It's and by no means am I saying that this is why they signed him, but it's a great marketing point. You can make content around that. He is pleasant to work with. Like
yes, that's the big point.
He's very good.
Yeah, I think like I asked around, and there was one sentence that stuck in my mind about him. Like one of his former coaches says, by signing him, you signed an adult to the Overwatch League. So like he's mature, he works at it professionally. He's has just like a solid attitude, no like drama behind him or anything. He just grinds, right? Like he's the grinder, but also like he's like he got his life in order, so to speak, right? And yeah, I think there's not really any obvious candidate where I'm like, why did you not pick that kid?
Yeah, especially if you're looking at a Western flex.
And I also think generally he's like underrated by a lot of people. Like I saw some weird takes on Reddit about his quality, and I think they got to rewatch the Envy bots, because
but that's the thing. They just look at World Cup and they're just like, oh man, he wasn't great in World Cup. Like I don't know. Like nobody spends their time watching contenders, and I like as somebody who has seen a little bit, I haven't dove into every single one of their matches, but I watched Gauntlet, I watched Pacific Showdown. He's pretty good. Yeah, good player. I don't know how we've gone completely the opposite direction, but there again, that's the nature of Reddit. We completely rubber band after a while. He was the a Reddit darling, and now he's not worth it, and Unco should be starting. I don't know. I think he's good. I think even if you think that it's a lateral move, I think that Crimzo brings intangibles to that team, or also limits the possibility of negative intangibles.
It's just like people don't think lateral signings are good, when it's like in this season they very well might be. We don't know yet, but like having like players of equal skill grind out different heroes and having them almost like be able to be switched out depending on the meta without many hiccups in shot calling or chemistry or how they work with each other in real life is like invaluable, possibly. So side grades in terms of skill, that's only really a limited aspect of the entire picture. So I don't mind that at all. I think also Crimson has tenure with that organization. They very well know who he is, and that's like it just reminds me of how ATL has conducted pickups this season. Maybe Crimson isn't quite like Hawk Gator level pickup.
Sure, but
Dallas Fuel aren't a top 5 team in Overwatch League either.
Totally. Sure. But the idea is still there, and goes back to my point. You can find value that's non-monetary with a contenders team. Is it a money sink? Totally. But you get players as long as you put in the effort, like Alarm, like Gator, like Hawk, Sugar Free, obviously is another example. Like you can find these players as long as you give the people the right people the right opportunity to.
I'll even go as far as to say that Dallas probably made a mistake to not just promote the Envy backline to the main team. I think
I like that move a lot.
Going full hybrids and having like pre-established synergy between them, and Fire is also like a pretty good prospect with a leveled head on his shoulders. It's like, I think that would have been probably an upgrade over what they have now.
Yep. Yeah, I think Fire would actually work really well on Valiant as well. Like if they were like looking for somebody, I think that would have been a great move.
Yeah. Well, But that's, again, one of the big distinctions between, a top 5 team and teams that are, flirting around the bottom 7, bottom 8 is their ability to secure top tier, like tier 2 talent and bring them up into the Overwatch League and keep them in your organization.
Yeah. The more I think about this, how are we not thinking about that Envy non-promotal position in the same way that we are thinking about? I think we might very well wake up like after like a couple of games, let's say 10 games, and think, did Envy really screw up in the same sense that Florida Mayhem screwed up by not promoting their contenders roster?
I think there's a chance. I think it's tough because I don't expect Fire and Crimzo to. I think Crimzo sees more playtime than Fire does.
Sharp is in the
definitely does, but there again, he's also fighting that kind of uphill battle against Edison. And to be fair,
no, I mean, like if he went to Dallas instead,
yeah, if
then
both of those players
had to shell out big time for
exactly, like if we can see those players and actually test that, then I completely agree with you. I agree with you in principle as well, but I think the public is going to look at that and well, they're not seeing playtime, so they must not be good. And then the theory's bumped.
Yeah.
No, I think in principle, yes, these are 3 players you could have easily put into your roster. You know what kind of value they have because you've worked with them. You have a coaching staff that's worked with them. You have notes on these players. Do they fit? No. Okay, I guess get rid of them, but it feels very weird that we would pass on prospects that are good for players that are arguably over the hill.
So remember, Aaron Rodgers was a backup to Brett Favre. There's one for you sports kids out there. Just remember that. 3 years right in the bench. What an NFL could have been. Sorry.
I think, to be fair to Dallas, what might have happened is that the order of operation of their off-season moves went in such a way that this move didn't become apparent. In the sense that, okay, they think we have X amount of players that are just locked in and we cannot get rid of them. And then they're like, okay, we got to upgrade big and make the most out of the positions we can change, or we still have slots. And then it's like, 2 players step back. Oh, okay. So I think maybe if this all happened at the start of the preseason, postseason, maybe they make different moves and then get like a couple of Envy players up and then allocate resources towards like maybe a better off tank, something like that.
And that's where I kind of hope that them actually having a very positive track record on flipping players from their contenders team opens their eyes in that regard, much in the same way that the Mayhem had a good thing going and then just completely let it go. I think that should be these moves for this offseason for Dallas and Envy. This can work. You can build for the future. You don't have to keep running the same contrived and dry players over and over. Like you can build for the future, and that's okay.
But they got to finish paying the ones that they have now.
Maybe stop re-upping them.
Like that has to be. So I mean, and thinking about it, it's like, why would you? Are the people in Envy not aware of the talent that they have and just not able to sign them, or was it more like they got good offers elsewhere and you've got players on the Dallas Fuel who
are locked down?
Are locked down for.
Stop locking down players that shouldn't be locked down.
Nice paychecks, very nice paychecks considering the Overwatch League performance.
Totally,
no complaints there. Good luck getting that buyout.
I think we should start to eye these moves very skeptically and go, why are we doing this?
Yeah. They kind of did a little bit with Mickey, right? So kind of tangentially close to this. Mickey's kind of been, I don't know if relegated is the best word, but he's going to be a content creator now for Fuel/Envy.
Sure. Doesn't mean that he can't be in the locker room. That's all he was anyways. You're just paying him a contract. He's hogging a spot. I like Mickey. I think he brought a lot to this team, but he can still do that
Mickey
elsewhere.
Was probably the best marketing player that the Dallas Fuel had. 100%. The first 2 seasons. I mean, he was 100%. Got the first. You got the Dennis Hoelka award in season 1, right?
Yeah,
that's great. People love that. Probably sold a ton of jerseys.
Mm-hmm.
And even I want to
when
go
they
up.
were
Like,
out of
there are people that I would just like. I would never go up and like want to get a picture with somebody. Mickey's not that guy though. I would go up in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
and be like, "Hey, can we get a picture?" Be like,
Totally.
He'd be like, "Who are you?" Like, I'm KickedTripod. I do tactical crouch. He goes, "What's that?"
You're
I go,
YouTube man.
Shut up and take a picture of me, okay?
He's the type of person who, you know, people hold signs up in the crowd and say, "Play Mickey, you cowards," you know. And then when he is played, the crowd goes nuts.
Yep.
That can still be utilized without actually putting him in your starting roster. So I think all in all for the fuel, I think this is a step in the right direction. I think this is good, but I think they're just kind of hampered by a lot of the older decisions that they've made.
I agree. All right, let's move on. It's the Overwatch League begins in 4 days.
Does, weirdly enough.
It's right around the corner, and we're going to be testing out a few different formats for the best way to kind of preview the matches for everybody. So make sure if you're watching on YouTube or watching on Twitch, whatever, just let us know what you think about the format, what you want. And we put this out to our patrons and subs. We're like, hey, what do you guys want to see from a preview show? Like, what's really important that, you know, we don't know necessarily what watch point is going to look like. We don't know how long it's going to be, how in depth it's going to go. Saturday and Sunday, you're going to be glued to your screens watching Overwatch League games if you can be. So what do you need to know going into a preview show or walking away from a preview show to feel like, yeah, I'm excited for this weekend. I know what I need to know. I understand the storylines, the stakes, and, you know, just what's going on. So make sure to do that. The other thing we wanted to do beforehand, and Yiska, I kind of forgot about this, though, but I believe we're bringing back the German word of the week.
Yes. So the one I can think about, and I guess that serves as a preview, is, okay, it basically 2 words, and they mean the same thing, but they're both just as complicated as each other, so I'm going to make you suffer through it. One is Unberechenbarkeit, and the other one is Sprunghaftigkeit.
You.
Squeeze me? Say that once more.
Okay, repeat after me.
Okay.
Un.
B.
Rech.
N.
Bar. Kite. Unberechenbarkeit.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Uberechenbarkeit.
I'll post it.
Uberechenbarkeit.
Pretty close, pretty good. So it means basically like volatility or like very incalculable, if you want, right?
All right.
So
like the number of vowels in that word. Incalculable.
Yes.
Innumerable.
Indeed. So the idea is, and once again, hint, you're going to find out more on this on Thursday, but the meta is wild, and we're not even in hero pools.
No.
So
Crush fingers.
We have 4 different comps that are regularly played on different maps just in Asia. And then we have different and there's also modular difference where it's like, okay, it's still the same archetype, the same comp, but some teams play you with Orisa and Ryan, and some teams play you with Diva and Ryan. And then in NA, it is wild. And it feels to me that there's also 2 scrim bubbles because a lot of teams are playing each other, so they're not scrimming against them. So there's like also the Diva Rhine and then Orisa Rhine shenanigans. But then there's also a bunch of Widow. McCree is played, even though that's not at all like everyone abandoned that in Asia. Stuff like that. I've even seen people talk about strategies with Symmetra. So it's wild. It's basically what we wanted out of Overwatch League with the map meta, but we were not even in hero pools, right?
Who brought you that in the preseason, chat? Who said that was going to happen? We did.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. With all of the travel, with all the regional metas, things are going to get weird. If they stay weird, that's hard to predict. We don't need more barriers to entry. Hopefully, Blizzard sees this and just scraps the idea of hero pools before it even starts.
I don't think we're scrapping.
No, we're not, unfortunately. But
and I haven't. Oh, okay. So Super said something like the players talked to the developers. I haven't actually talked about it to anyone about the content of that call, but I will say I would be surprised. Oh no. Okay. Oh, we are once again being very careful with what we say because we don't want to be clipped saying
He's
something
unclipping
stupid.
himself. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I'm clipping, but I think one of the core demands or like suggestions that players have is let's not do it weekly. Let's do it bi-weekly or something else.
Yeah, I think that's a lot more reasonable and meets their goals, even though I just fundamentally disagree with them. But I think that's a lot more reasonable.
All right. Fair enough. It's time.
Yeah.
It's time to preview.
Let's go.
Let's get that up and running. All right. So before we get started, there's a few things about the preview. I kind of talked about, hey, we want your feedback and all that kind of stuff. I do want to give a special shout out to Eric, who helped put together the spreadsheet to give us something that looks really good for the stream, but at the same time is something that means that I don't have to spend 45 minutes editing in Photoshop for one image that's used for 15 minutes on one episode kind of thing. So he did an amazing job building out the spreadsheet, making it look good, and hopefully people who are watching the video like it, and people who are in audio, you're fine. You can still hear what we're talking about. But other than that, let's get into our week 1 match previews. So the Overwatch League is obviously just a few days away, and each week we're going to be previewing most of the most important matches and storylines going into the weekend. Pretty straightforward. We're not going to cover every match, we don't think, but we will be covering the matches we think are the most important for the week. And of course, we're going to pick winners as well. Make sure to go to highnoon.gg, get into that league, pick with us, lose. I hope all 3 of us are in the top 5, so I only have to pay for 2 prize winners.
Yeah, right.
That's how it works. That's how it's going to work. If all 3 of us are in the top 5, you have to buy us merch.
Yeah.
All right. So cool. Let's before we, I think, even start talking about the matches themselves, I think it's really important that we discuss the major implications for week 1, because this is the first week of Overwatch League Season 3. This is the first week of traveling and homestands. This is the first week of the rest of our lives. This is the first time that we're going to start seeing the, I would say, the ultimate vision of Overwatch League, that is this traveling geographic esports league. This is the first time we're going to see it really happen beyond the sporadic once-a-stage homestands that we've had in the past. So, Yiska, I want to ask you first, how much information do you think that we're going to be able to get about the strength of teams in the first week of games?
Oh, okay. So I think generally you will, like, if you look at the matches that are happening, a lot of them, it's very seldom the case that 2 top 10 teams are playing against each other. By the projected power rankings, I will have to revisit, like, the last time I thought about those matches in week 1, I didn't have the pulp, if you want, the juicy pulp that I have now.
No. Sorry, there we go. Boom. Sorry, the juicy pulp.
So you can't take it back.
I take it back.
Really,
I haven't used the boot one in a while.
Way. Yeah, but you clap first, so it's Pog. But I think just like in the week 1, it's of course like there's a lot of volatility in terms of like how do people adjust to that circumstance the first time. Yes, there were homesteads last time, but maybe like some teams will learn better from their experience than others. I think, as always, this is one game. Some teams play 2 games. Don't oversweat it, but we can, like, it wouldn't be the Overwatch League scene if we weren't to make any crazy projections on season strength or outcome based on these matches. I don't think it's realistic to see that yet, because like week one, like the hero pulse thing hasn't happened. The travel restrictions, or like, you know, this travel dread, if you want, hasn't set in yet. Like it's basically like game one last year, or game one, game two, whatever, how many games you're playing. I will also say, like based on the percentages that we have up there, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because some people were asking in chat, this is not based on like impressions or any values that we assigned. This is based on map wins or.
So this is actually based off
season.
of. So this is actually based off of oddsportal.com, which is a odds aggregator based on betting odds.
I'm making a lot of money on that Dallas game.
That's what I'm saying. So we're gonna, and we're trying something here. We can totally remove it from the spreadsheet if it ends up not finding value. But I think it finds I found them really interesting, and I think it really lets us see who the, I don't want to say outside world thinks is stronger or whatever, more overpowered than the other team, but
there's
just
some money to be made.
That's what I'm saying. Thanks, patrons. We're about to double your money this week. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's very interesting to see some of these odds and to kind of draw those two together based on what we see and what we're talking about versus what the, you know, odds are generally seen as very kind of mathematical and infallible. If you like actually line up all the odds for the season, you should get it wrong, I guess, if you always bet the odds. So we're including them there for right now, just to kind of see and feel how that lends itself as we talk to it. So
somebody needs to get a hold of us to get these odds right, because somebody's just losing them.
Just don't. And also, I don't want to have anyone like just like flaming me, and because that happened last year, right? Like where I put my percentages on Twitter and someone bet like $50 and then just like started cursing me out, pretty much CS:GO style. It's just like, how much, bro? How much? And he's like, $50. Yeah, I feel for you. But
hey, you play the game, you know, you go into it knowing this is a losing game. We're just trying to minimize the losses. Yeah.
We also just maybe from a legal point of view, of course, not trying to influence anything here. And
no, of course not.
I don't still have I'll say, before I really started actively content creating, I did like 1 or 2 bets. But I definitely won't and haven't ever since I started talking to even one member of the teams. So
some meme level stuff.
Definitely won't. Yeah.
Anyways, that's the percentages that you see on the stream. We'll say the percentages out loud when we start talking about the individual matches, but we're going to be kind of using this or trying out this format just to see how it kind of helps paint our discussions and how we see the teams and matchups maybe a little bit differently than those betting websites are. By the way, if you use our info to make bets on websites and you lose, that's on you. And if you send me an email or angry tweet about it, I'm going to print it out and put it on my wall. I'm going to hang it up right back there and just be like, well, you're an idiot. Make a decision for yourself. Anyways, so major implications. Back to major implications this week. So, Joe, what about you? How much information are you hoping to extrapolate from week 1 of...
It's pretty basic in general. What I think I'm going to be looking at is exactly what's being run and then trying to project that onto other teams and seeing from what we've seen from these players in the past, can they at least pilot some of the things that are run? Does it match a style that they've ran in the past? Does it match something that they've been successful with in the past? Is there a coaching staff member or a player that has found success with this meta for a long time, much in the same way that like Vancouver came in after dominating in goats. You put them in goats, they're going to do well, right? I think that's pretty much a given. Will that happen this year? It's probably unlikely, especially for the length of time, but seeing how these teams stack up just off what's being run, I think we have a good idea going into it, but that again, that's all incomplete information. So this, while as equally incomplete, this starts to shed a little bit more light. So that's kind of where I'm looking at how to view week 1.
So this week as well, we are going to see 3 of Overwatch League's presumed best teams in San Francisco, NYXL, and Vancouver this weekend. As we look at these top teams, Yiska, like what are you looking to see from the Shock?
Are they playing this weekend?
Yeah, they play the
Dallas
last game in Dallas.
Yep.
Against
Dallas.
Against that. Yeah, I almost forgot. We all the sad thing is that
81-19 is those percentages, by the way. 81-19.
Yeah. I think that might even be high. Or low in terms of like reference point. But yeah, I think the Shock's definitely, like from all I've heard, still enter the Overwatch League in as pole position team to beat. They are, from what I've heard, teams that are splitting scrims, but then again, does
scrims, boys,
really mean?
it's scrims.
And yeah, I think everyone's sort of also interested, just like what kind of comps they're running, because like they're the big dogs, and from my understanding is that they've played. I mean, it's hard to say unorthodox style because like everyone's just like playing different stuff, right? But they have some interesting strategies that they're just trying out. Doesn't mean that they think that it's the premier strategy. They're probably also just like testing the waters, and yeah, I think we can expect like top tier Overwatch from them, and I think we can also expect a stomp. Honestly, like I don't know what kind of home ground advantage you think Dallas will have, but that's going to be a library in that arena at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I expect them to be booed. I hope they will be booed. Shock, that is. And yeah, I think these are players that should not phase them in the slightest. And this is a resident sleeper game. Like, I am not interested in watching this game in the slightest. This is a Shock 3-0, no problem.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that's there's not much there.
Anything there though? Are you at all like what if we come in and do you think that there's any? Are you looking for how strong relative to these teams that we rate so highly are? I would say SF and NYXL specifically seem to be top 3 easy in just about every single power ranking worth watching or looking at.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you think like, I don't know. I guess I don't know.
It's like it's beating up on people like very, very below you. Like if you struggle, then that's a talking point. But I think it is a stretch for me to even think of a world where that actually happens. Even with NYXL into Boston and Shock into Dallas, much the same way. Like I have to see it. And if it goes the way I think it will, there's very little to glean from it. You're beating up on children.
Sure. All right.
If they lose a map, okay, that's a lot more interesting. Maybe they're not as strong. I'm not willing to immediately buy into that theory, but that will say a lot. But even then, I think that's a tough ask.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk about this first match then. So the first match for the week is going to be the Toronto Defiant versus the Paris Eternal. Both teams that we put in the bottom 8 teams on the league. Paris definitely more towards the bottom than Toronto, but I had Toronto pretty low. I put them down 16 or 17. I can't quite remember, but they were low for sure. So let's just start right there. Right now, the odds are 60-40
Toronto.
for Toronto. This is the New York homestand, starts at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday. Just so we're all clear there. Joe, tell me a little bit about what you think about this matchup. This is one of the closest matchups that we have for the entire week at 60-40.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Unfortunately, the week 1 matches are not super interesting. I think it's exciting to get back in the swing of things, but if we're going to be kind of rational about this, these aren't like matches that I'm like super jazzed to go watch and look at. The absolute. Yeah, well, we'll get to Baroy in a second, but I think in general, there's just been like a lack of Overwatch to consume and watch and break down. And the fact that we're hearing that people are running weird stuff, the fact that, we haven't had Overwatch League in, however long, we'll take what we can get at this point. At least that's how I'm feeling. I won't speak for everybody, but Paris and Toronto in general should be pretty one-sided. I think the odds are a little low on Toronto's side. I think this is like a very convincing Toronto win. I expect them to kind of fit the meta, and the meta is very open-ended. This is not a solved question. This is not rigid from everything that I'm hearing, and I expect Toronto to do well. This is a Paris team that doesn't have their big Korean players that they've signed. I do think that Paris into London, and we'll get into that a little later in the show.
They don't have their Korean players?
No. Hanbin is not of age yet. I think his birthday is in a couple weeks. And obviously, Sparkle won't be of age until like mid-season. Right. So XE will be able to play that, this, that, the other thing. But those are some pretty big pieces missing to this puzzle. And even with that, I struggle. I need to see that Paris before I can measure them. But from what we see right now with this Paris roster and who's able to play, I don't think they'll win. I maybe give them a map, but I think Toronto is going to come out. I think they're going to look very good. I think they're going to really set the pace for how these games are going to look in terms of what's played, what the meta is. Like I said, I think it's very open to Yiska's point. And Toronto play in that very well. So I think this is a decisive Toronto victory.
Mm-hmm. You agree, Yiska?
Okay, so Paris is a juice blind spot.
Your juicer's not activated?
Yeah, no, that's not really juice in there. It's like I haven't heard how they're doing recently. But and therefore it's hard for me to estimate. Sure. Still think 60-40 is like fair for Toronto, because I've heard that they are doing okay. So sure. Okay, so generally, just from a roster perspective, it's probably slightly up for Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Then meta volatility comes in, it like converges to the average again. But then I hear some positive juice about Toronto. Then again, I have a tendency to overrate Toronto, so we're juicing down again a bit, and we arrive at 60%, being probably a fair probability of them.
If I had to pick a probability, if we're gonna do that game, I think this is like a 75-25.
Ooh, that's high. That's
high. I'm very confident in this Toronto team winning. That 25 opens up a map, 2 maps, and I'll be wrong, but I think 1 map for Paris is very reasonable. But even then, I think this is like a lock for Toronto. I do not see them losing.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is I agree, but I think like 60-40 is about perfect on it. I think you've got some emotional. This is the first match of the season, number 1.
Sure.
In a brand new city, brand new kind of format in the sense that they're, playing at a homestand, playing with Toronto's virtually a brand new team. Right? I think that there are things that play into Paris's favor that were I a betting man, this is one of the matches that I would pick to be an upset, even though I think ultimately Toronto is going to come down to it. This is like, John, pick one match that you think could be, I don't know, Valiant over Fuel, probably. Pick two matches.
This is not the game.
Pick two matches, and this would be one of them. But
what are the odds on Vancouver Glads? Yeah, I think that's much more likely to be an upset than Toronto Paris.
I mean, Joe, I get it. You're smarter than me, but that's not the bet I'm taking. I don't know.
Do you?
And you know me, I'm lower on Vancouver than anybody else. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I think, but again, I'm going on Toronto's side. I'm picking Toronto. Don't get your panties in a bunch here. But I think that there's ones here that we'll have to. I will know. I feel like this is a match that I will know very much, or I would know pretty quickly on how I end up feeling about Toronto, seeing them play Paris.
Totally.
Like, I feel like it'll be a really good bellwether game for them.
Good litmus test.
So, all right. I don't think I really have anything. I don't really think I have anything else to add on this one.
No.
Sweet.
I don't think, like, I also don't think it's that interesting of a match, to be honest. Like,
it's an awful one to start with.
Sadly,
and that's the thing with week one is and we've obviously talked about this pretty extensively, but it's tough to kind of really talk about these games because of the vast information we don't know. We hear about what's being played, but what's actually being shown on stage is another thing. Especially in terms of player performance, that kind of really will say a lot. And week two should be a whole lot more interesting. Right now, Paris has made some interesting moves. I like FD God, but I still am going to echo a lot of the same points I made in terms of power rankings. This team doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They're missing a lot of pieces that are strong. Even from what I'm hearing in terms of like what the meta could be, I really don't know exactly what Paris does and where they can be strong. And that's kind of where I'm looking at it. So
yeah. All right.
I'll also say, just like in terms of prediction, like even like in season one, where it was still much more predictable, like the start of stage is always marked like a certain kind or an uncertainty, like a soft reset in skill.
Yeah.
And like I remember for instance, Eden and me being very close to like 80% tendency, correct? Like saying or I was actually over 80%. Saying who would win, just like in terms of tendency, and most of the ones we got wrong were to the beginning of the stage, and then Overwatch turned pretty predictable in terms of match outcomes. How did I not get that word?
Was it stage 2 last season that was just like all over the place, like early stage 2? It was just like, how can you even guess this? Like, this is guesswork at this point. You might as well toss a coin and make your predictions. Like, I think that's a good way to approach this for a couple of these games. But if we rely on what we've built in the off season and how we're thinking about these teams, at least in week one, there's a lot of like very cut and dry games for me.
Fair.
Yeah.
A lot of 3-0s and some handshakes.
Well, let's talk about the second match here.
Yes.
And that is going to be the noon Pacific time match between the London Spitfire and NYXL. This is 78-22 in favor of NYXL here. Yiska, I mean, any big thoughts on this one?
Of course, like for me, I'll definitely watch that match. I'll watch all the matches, but this is one I'm looking forward to a little bit more because I'm interested in seeing how London looks. how NYXL looks as well.
Yep.
And I don't think we'll see an upset, but just like as a case study, how well are those teams playing with each other is certainly going to inform my opinion on the next couple of matches. And like just like as an experiment, I always like upon hearing the roster, I always dug this London roster and what it stood for, how it reminded me of LW Blue and Red. And I kind of want to see where coaches can take those rosters in terms of their potential. This is the season for the coaches to make the impact. And while we won't see the full breadth of their impact in stage one, like I also said in my preview, like it's just like London will get stronger over the season, pretty sure.
Yep.
And yeah, it's still in Excel.
I've heard a couple players be really high on London too and say that it's a team that is underrated and dangerous with their new look. So I think we'll have to see, but I don't think that they show that in week 1 against NYXL.
Yeah, I think as long as everything goes according to plan, you could see them punch up a tier come like a mid-season and even more so later in the season. But this early on for them to punch up against a title contender, that's almost impossible. Now, will hero pools change that come March? We'll have to see. But yeah, this one's, I will echo a lot of the same points that Yiska did. I'm interested to see what London looks like. I'm interested to see what kind of style NYXL is going for. Obviously, Plat chat's going around saying that, they could be a little bit more aggressive. The new coaching staff, the new players point them in that direction. And I think there is reason to believe that is the case. And there's a logical line. There's a theme there that I definitely agree with. But what does that team look like with those new players, with that style, and changing their style from last 2 seasons? They've always been that very passive, more defensive team. What do they look like when they're asked to be more proactive? Do these players gel with the players that have been more defensive in the past? That's kind of where I'm looking at with this team. I do want to see what players are even being played with London. How are they playing their roster? Do they have specific picks on specific maps? We're hearing that certainly a couple of these players are a little bit more specialized than what we would consider. So yeah, it's just more of an interesting game just to see what two teams that should be shaking up a lot of the narratives. Obviously London losing a lot of their firepower and rebuilding. That's a big kind of narrative point. And NYXL much in the same way, but a little bit less so in degrees. Could they possibly bring a new style? Are they going to play the same old, passive kind of slow style? It's an interesting one. We'll have to see.
Yeah. In general, it's just, it's also Havane against his old team.
That's true. That is true.
That's also an interesting aspect of this. And I don't expect there to be really any rivalry because I don't think it was like a fallout and the reason why he quit.
Sure.
So there's no blood or anything. But there are cool questions just to be asked. Like, what does London A look like? What does who plays for NYXL in terms of the DPS?
Sure.
Is there something about who are you? What about Agape and Pavane? Can IMT bring a new style to NYXL? How is hotbar meshing? Like all these things. And hopefully we'll have some answers because of that match, at least initially, so we can like extrapolate a little bit and make start cool narratives that way. Yep. Because once again, NYXL, their narrative is they are one of the, or possible, okay, let's just say it. They are the most consistent team in Overwatch League history. So consistently good team, sure. Great team in Overwatch League history. Are they going to repeat that this season? That's the question. And if they can, like amazing. Also, then the question, of course, we won't have anything but mid-season tournaments. I'm not sure how serious
How
teams
valuable
will
is that?
take those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it will be hard to see if there's an NYXL that chokes in playoffs, because we don't have playoffs in
Right.
like stage playoffs. But like, of course, like the big question is, can NYXL bring it in playoffs? That once again, we will have to wait until the end of summer. And yeah, I think NYXL, my God, like, do I want to say this? I mean, they are just my favorite team as a package.
Sure.
They have like cool players, amazing branding, like a very cool, lasting storyline with overarching narratives where the Apex players that were around since Apex are still some of the best players in the world, which is not an exception. They have the Jonex storyline. They have the redemption arc of Who Are You in there. Like everything is so cool and so maturely handled, where it's like you don't have any drama seeping out of that at all. And then you have like the cool packaging of like those videos that really give me the OGN vibes. NYXL is the last remaining Apex team in Overwatch League for me.
Yep.
And as such, like I just have a soft spot for them.
Yeah, they do everything right. I think they're strong in almost every aspect, from marketing to content creation to
their
roster. Like,
announcement this week.
it really shows you. Compare that to a lot of these other teams that aren't doing anything. We're 4 days out, where you're posting images. They're creating whole like interesting hype clips. Atlantis wasn't even that bad. I don't know why it's getting all that hate. Like it's supposed to be on the nose. It's supposed to be kind of tongue in cheek. That's the goal. It's not, it's not even in the same realm as NYXL's. They're two different things.
Yep.
But yeah, I think you can really start to see who's investing in the long term and who's just kind of like floating by. Sad as it is to say.
Yeah. Fair. No. I'm excited to see. I bought a Shock jersey, one of the new ones, but NYXL has kind of been my team from the beginning. Back when everybody hated the branding, said it was awful branding, and
it is, yeah. It's growing on me, to be fair.
Oh, it's the best branding. Still is the best branding. There's subliners for CDL we can talk about, but NYXL branding is so good. They went through for that announcement. I'm pretty sure they went through and redid the hero intros in Forge. It's just insane. Oh, it looks so good. Good. I couldn't believe it. Anyways, this isn't related, so we're gonna go on, and we're gonna talk about match number 3. Match number 3. We're going over to Dallas on Saturday. The LA Gladiators versus the Vancouver Titans. 63-37 in favor of Vancouver. This is probably the highest tier, the highest
caliber.
Yeah, the highest caliber teams going head to head for the entire weekend.
Yep. Easily match of the week.
Yeah. So, and this is we're going to start doing like a match of the week thing. We're not this time because we have way more games to talk about. I think for week 1, the implications are much larger, and in the future they won't be. So Vancouver Titans versus LA Gladiators. DPay on the show. I would say next to NYXL, the LA Gladiators have been one of the most, I think, consistently well-performing teams as well. Like top 5-ish pretty consistently from the beginning, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty
up there.
You're right in the sense that they they're not NYXL caliber, but it's really kind of incredible what this franchise has done over the past 2 years to put up strong numbers. They've got a great community. Lots of fans. They've I think largely they're the top of like the, if you put like NYXL and Shock and like the S tier of like franchises and branding and full packages and whatever, they're high A tier, I think. And so, from that perspective, it's going to be really interesting to see the Vancouver Titans, on the other hand, giving us a quite a bit different look. Fissure walking into the event last week in a bumper jacket, just no chill at all. It's going to be a very interesting first match. Joe, what do you think for this match?
So I think that if there was if there obviously are a few games that are possible upsets, right? Like that if I was a betting man, I would put money on, and I think this is one of them. And how I come to that conclusion is when we look at Vancouver and we look at how we've tried to pitch them on the show and in articles, and how a lot of people have talked about this team, they're not the most cohesive. This is not Runaway anymore. This is a new team under new management, and they're, in my projection, are going to struggle immediately and will pick up the pace, whereas Gladiators has a stacked coaching staff. Like, you look at these names and it's just the who's who of like Western coaches that are just like mega brain. I think they're way more prepared for what's coming than Vancouver is in terms of like just financial structure, players, depth, understanding of what's going on in the meta, as chaotic as it is. I think that they're going to come in a whole lot more prepared. I think Vancouver is going to try and play one or two things across a number of maps. I think Gladiators as a franchise has always been the team to come out with set strategies. I think I have Gladiators here. I think it'll be close, but I think I give the edge to Glads. I really do. As much as critical as I have been before, I see Vancouver getting almost cheesed. I think they get cheesed out. I think that's exactly how they're going to picture it in map 2 when they're down 1-1. I think this is a good match for Glads, especially to start off the season. This will be a good mistest either way. If this is just completely one-sided, then great. I can be wrong, but I think Glads can come out here and perform.
Yiska, do you agree?
No, I think Glad's okay. I think also that would be one team that I would definitely uprank.
Sure.
I think this will be a great match. Definitely the best of the weekend. And I still think it's too early for Vancouver to face the problems.
Yes.
Even though I can already tell you, like, there's some. It's not about it's not about the players, but there's already some untenable shit happening around them.
But that affects the players, though, does it not?
Sure, but like
you're already starting on a bad foot, and it's in a chaotic meta. This is a team that hasn't been super good in chaotic metas, or metas that haven't been very rigid. I don't know. I do not see them doing
sure, but I don't think like we would see it on day one. I don't think that's happening.
I think that's the perfect time for it to happen. It happens early. It happened to Shock in playoffs. How do you beat them? You beat them early. You come out fast. You come out strong. Granted, they should have won that match, to be fair, against Atlanta, but
yeah,
you hit them early. I think Gladiators is going to hit Vancouver early. They're not going to know what's going on in terms of the meta, or they're just going to be trying to figure it out. They're getting their footings. I think Gladiators has the staff to already have their footing and be a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
I
don't buy that. I think Titans are the favorite here. I would say 65 Titans.
I'd have it completely the opposite. 65 Glads.
Jeez. I think Yiska kind of highlighted my major points. Is I think that this team is going to implode, but I don't think they implode on week 1.
I'm also not sure if they're actually going to implode, but if they're imploding, Now
I think
can see why.
they're gonna. I think they're gonna implode.
I think they'll implode later. I don't. What I'm not saying is that they're going to implode now.
I also want to
think
know how
the bickering starts.
you had What did you have Gladiators? You had Gladiators.
I had Gladiators very low. I had Gladiators at like 12.
Yeah. And all of a
that's
sudden you
weird,
think
right?
you're going to have this team on opening weekend beat a number 6 team? Somebody
Yeah.
you put 6th?
Yeah.
Well, then what the are you?
Well, that's
Power
power
ranking.
rankings. Power rankings
But I mean,
I think I've justified it pretty well.
I
I don't
know.
think Gladiators are going to finish the season beating the Vancouver Titans in the playoffs. No. But right now, I think there is
You think Vancouver's going to implode over the course of the season? The LA
Sure.
Gladiators are going to have to do some sort of imploding to go from beating the Titans to losing to the Titans, don't you think?
Well, I think you can beat the Titans on day one in a chaotic meta and just underperform throughout the regular season as everybody upgrades in terms of just like getting better. I don't genuinely think that this team is bad. I think 12 is a pretty reasonable placing. Still plans, still a good team, still solid. But yeah, I think there's enough of I have enough skeptical eyes on Vancouver to say, hey, Gladiators can upset here. Is it an upset? Yes. Am I saying that Gladiators should be a top 10 team, a top 5 team? No. I think that there's enough volatility here that there's an upset.
I can't get on board with anything you're saying, but
Okay.
You have deposited enough I'm right, you're wrong things in the past where you've been right on things and I'm like, I can't get on board with that, where I'm just gonna go, all right, this is just Joe using his Oracle eyes. And I look forward to talking about how we were wrong next week, because that's how it always ends up happening.
I don't think I'm that like, this is like a 3-2. Like, this isn't going to be like a one-sided affair by any means.
Sure. And I'm not saying you think it's one-sided, but
just to clarify,
it's just a lot of conflicts for me, but
sure. I mean, that's very fair.
I think there's even a possibility for Vancouver to stomp.
I like a stomp 3-1. You got to give them a map.
I'd give Glad a map. Sure.
Yeah, I think they deserve a map. They're good enough to take a map. I don't think they stomp though. I think it's
I'm
like
not saying that's the most likely scenario. I think it's going to be a close match, but its magnitude's more likely that Vancouver stomps than Gladiators stomping.
And this is both, I believe, this is their only match. No, the Titans have to prepare for Valiant.
Yeah.
On Sunday.
That's a good point. They do also have to prepare for Valiant.
Whereas Gladiators do not have to prepare for anyone else.
That's true. Great point. I like that point. I'm going to steal that point.
I hate when I'm making Joe's best points. No, I'm just kidding. Fair enough. I mean, we're going to see, right? It's nice that we finally disagree on a match.
Yeah. I think this is probably the only one we'll probably disagree on, unfortunately.
Maybe. Let's talk about this next one. LA Valiant versus the Dallas Fuel. 63% in favor of the Dallas Fuel. Keep in mind, this is taking place in Dallas.
Yes.
So,
oh, it's rough being a Dallas fan, dude. Holy. Oh my God.
So the odds are in your favor. Yiska, I have a feeling you say that you don't actually think so.
Yeah, no. That's a 3-1 Valiant right there. Like 70% Valiant.
70%. Wow.
Yeah.
Joe, same.
Yeah, I can't lie. I even going into this, I figured it was probably going to be close. I think that is kind of out the window now. Yeah, I think this is very clearly a Valiant win. I assume it's going to be very decisive. I think it's going to be very, they're going to come out, and I think that's one of those games where I am interested either way. we have Crimzo. Okay, cool. We have Decay, sweet. We have KSP. We have all these interesting players. I'm going to be watching with a pretty close eye regardless, but I like what I'm hearing from Valiant.
So, and again, this kind of comes down to, let's go back to power rankings for a second, because I think all three of us had Valiant 18th, 19th.
Yep.
Dallas.
Very low.
Sitting,
I had Dallas
I think as a
high.
play-in-ish team there, as a team that could sneak into play-ins. What are you hearing? I mean, I know you can't go into too much specifics here, but what have you heard that has allowed you to change your minds besides Scrimbucks? Is that just it? Just Scrimbucks? And I think more than anything, I want to hear more why you think that. I understand LA Valiant are scrimming well. I get it.
Sure.
It's not a secret anymore. Valiant are scrimming well. People are saying that they're doing well. Chat has said it a million times at this point.
Yeah.
So Valiant are scrimming well, but Dallas is still a team that's, sitting up 14th through 12th in relative power rankings. Are they going up 8 points? And is Dallas that much worse than is Dallas that much worse than we placed them?
I think there's a big factor in terms of they've injected a whole lot of talent, right? That's going to need time to kind of marinate and cohese, right? So if there's going to be, again, an upset, I think day one is going to be the best time for that to happen. I think as the season goes on, I do like the pieces that Dallas has. Can they mold them? Again, I have my criteria. I look at individual skill, and I think Valiant is a little bit lacking there. I think they have some gems, but overall, I think Dallas has a whole lot more just brute force firepower. Can they wield it the best way possible? That's where I go, hey, maybe this isn't it. And I have Dallas as my probably the team I'm going to get wrong or put too high. I'm too bullish on Dallas. I probably will admit. And the team I'm too bearish on is probably the Mayhem. If you would like a more explained reasoning on that, check out the article. But yeah, I want to see what Dallas looks like week 2, week 3. If they can't get it together, then yeah, they seem like they're going to be bottoming out. And it's hearing good things on one side and not so great things on the other. Pickups they've made are good, but like I said, I think they need time to cohese and really become a team.
Yeah.
I'm really close on Dallas. I know that Yiska, you said 70-30. I can't get on board with that at all. Maybe like 60-40, I think. And
I think that's fair.
I think that there's a few things going on there. Number one, Dallas playing in Dallas, I think is a big deal. Number 2, Valiant is, I believe, preparing for.
Well, to be fair, they're both preparing.
They're both so they're both preparing for 2 top tier teams, right? So you have Valiant preparing for Vancouver, and you have Dallas preparing for Shock. I don't think that Dallas is preparing for Shock.
No,
I wouldn't. I would go.
I mean, what does
at our
homestand mean?
I think so. Here, I'm going to go like this. I'm just going to say it. I think Fuel's going to win this here.
Oh goddamn.
So number one, I think the stakes are really high for Dallas, and they're going into this weekend and saying we are not walking away from this 0-2. So San Francisco
Too
Shock,
bad.
you know they're coming. You're not spending a lick of time preparing for the San Francisco Shock.
Well, we can assume that doesn't mean that they aren't, right? Like if you were the GM, that's how you would do it. I don't know that that's how they're doing it though. That's the big question.
I have to assume that they have brains.
Can I ask, what do you mean in terms of preparing? Do you just think teams will, Dallas will find out what specifically Valiant was scrimming on specific maps against other teams, and then we'll prepare against that because they have no footage to prepare for?
It's true.
I think it's more about strategizing around players and what you do know. Like, you're right. There's a lot that you don't know. And I think on top of what you don't know, combined with the fact that you're really gonna lose anyway. Just is all the more reason to go, you know what? Like, there's no reason to change the playbooks on here. We run this map this way, and this is how we're gonna do it, and that's it. And so
I think you spend a whole lot more time thinking about the Dallas Valiant game than you do the Dallas Shock game. Yes, I agree. Like, there's not a ton of tape to go off of, but the investment that you can put in probably should be weighted towards the Valiant game. I don't know if it's all. That's up to the coaches, but I think in general, that's probably how it's being weighted.
But I get what you're saying. Sorry, go ahead.
I think the Valiant also playing against the Titans, right?
Yes.
I definitely can see how packing is someone who goes, I want to win both of them.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's just like, on paper, you probably should just focus on Dallas, but it depends on the coach. If you want to win everything, and that's your attitude going into it,
and that's what Packer said on the show. Amount of time. He's like, exactly. He's like, we're here to win. If I didn't think that we couldn't win,
you wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be coaching this roster, and I wouldn't to pick these players.
So that's where I go. Is there a realm where Dallas could have a fraction of that and say, hey, why don't we put in a little bit of time into the Shock? Why don't we think about this instead of just going into just no preparation? I think most of the preparation will probably be for Valiant, but to say none, I think is a little extreme.
I mean,
it's semantics at the end of the day, but regardless.
Okay, gosh, there goes my point. Oh, no, it's but to the point largely stands is I think that Dallas have a lot higher stakes there, a lot more experienced players, and I think a home crowd behind them. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say Dallas here, even though I want to say Valiant. I think you all say, like, make great points. And I think if it took place on a different weekend somewhere else, I would pick Valiant in a heartbeat.
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
Really?
Yep.
Like it's always interesting to me, like, how that works. So the only paper on home advantage in sports I can remember basically put it down to fans having an impact on.
Well, that's the measurable
referee,
change, right? You can't measure how it impacts your like brain chemistry, right?
I come from baseball, Yiska. I know you don't get like baseball as a sport, but baseball is a very, you see it, you know it, you feel it. And the people who see, know, and feel better than others are the people who get the job, not the quantifiable. And like, I know we've joked about Moneyball in the past, and that's kind of like the two philosophies of baseball. There's one very mathematical approach, is baseball is all numbers and math. And there's another one that goes, baseball is something that you can feel and that you can see. And if you have an eye for it, you can understand it in a way that you can't put down on a piece of paper. And you hire the people who, even though they can't put it down on a piece of paper, to say that. And I think you're right. There's probably no demonstrable evidence, especially for Overwatch League, that homestands have a meaningful or have an impact to turn a odds against into an odds for, right? And applying an actual variable value to that. I understand that, but
yeah, I think one thing that will happen is that teams are going to have an inherent advantage because they have access to practice facilities the entire time, while on the road, Blizzard dictates how many blocks you get. You get 2 blocks tops, unless you somehow make that. And by the way, you probably cannot choose the opponent unless. So basically, what's happening is you get booked at the same time another team gets booked. And then unless you break that etiquette of scrimming that other team and you go to maybe someone that isn't playing that week, which I think is totally fine to do, by the way. It is also maybe not the best practice that you could be getting. And then you have limited practice. And then the team that has a home advantage therefore gets just more practice in, especially in meta switches. That is important. Totally. I don't think it matters for week 1 because everyone's just not on the road, right? Like, or it matters less than.
Yes, it matters less. I would agree with that. But I think you bring up a good point, and I'm glad that we can kind of like verbally talk through these because I hadn't even thought of that. I think the coaching staff element here is a big one. You're an away team that has less practice. You need to get the most out of your scrim time that you're allotted. And I expect Packing to come in with a very structured approach to this, know exactly their game plan and how those scrims are positively impacted or are looking a little bit, meager, right? And how to fix that. Dallas has all the time in the world to fix that. They have all the practice. The coaching staff should be able to change that, but I am a little bit skeptical on this coaching staff. I'm not going to lie to you. I like what Packing's doing. I like what Packing's done in the past. Arrow has kept the boat afloat. We haven't really seen them explode. We haven't really seen a gigantic change in the fuel. Does this new roster promote that change? I don't think so just yet. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they could grow into that. But I think everything on paper for me points towards to Valiant, like maximizing those scrim times, getting the most out of it, having that structured approach, not being shakeable. Yeah, I like Valiant here.
All right.
Not as bullish as Yiska, but yeah.
Fair enough. Well, let's go to the February 9th, my birthday. Let's see if we can get some of these right here. So, February 9th, game 1 in New York, the London Spitfire versus the Paris Eternal, 61-39 in favor of Paris on this one. Yiska, thoughts?
I feel that's wrong in the other direction. I think I feel better about 60-40 London. Like Paris is still pre-Hunbin, Sparkle, and especially early in the season, I'm hearing encouraging things about Spitfire anyway. Again, like juice hole for Paris, but I feel like that's still an interesting match in terms of just like how are these teams that we projected to be like maybe swimming on top of the bottom 3 Cheeks teams, like Overwatch League is basically like Overwatch League has one butt and it has 3 cheeks, and I think they are above those.
Yeah. Okay.
And I give it to London here.
Yeah, this is also Unberechtigkeit.
Yes.
Yes, very much.
Wow,
so.
that was actually really good. Very nice. Der Hostmann.
I think much in that same way, this one is just a toss-up. I think we'll have a lot better read on this after day 1, but just as a long shot, I think there's probably more of a chance that London can squeak something out here, but I think it's going to be messy. I think on one map they're going to look great, and then the next they're just going to bottom out, and then they could come back. Like this, as much as I think that London will grow into being more consistent, it sounds like they're still kind of struggling to find that through line. And Paris is still very, very unknown. So I think after day 1, we'll have a better read on exactly what this might look like. But going into week 1, I do have to give a minor edge to London.
Yeah. And also say
60-40 or
no, this is like 55, like barely marginal.
Okay.
Like this is tough to go one way or the other. Like this is pooping back and forth forever, to use Monty's idiom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I don't really have a whole lot of thoughts on this one here, especially I think we've already discussed both teams a little bit at length, and kind of the strengths going in. So we're going to cut it there for that team, and we're going to talk about this next one. NYXL versus Boston Uprising. Good. Next. On
yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't see.
I like
one
Mineral.
Of the 3 cheeks is in that match.
I like Mineral, right?
I do like Mineral.
16.
84-16. I like Mineral.
I think that speaks a lot. I like Mineral. The odds are there. You understand why they're there. Again, I don't think this Boston Uprising roster is good. They're 20th on everybody's power rankings for a reason. And there's really not much to talk about. This should be a 3-0 and a handshake, and we move on.
Yeah, that's Boston is one of those cheeks, and I think this will be rough. Like I think maybe NYXL will mess around a bit. I think now that I think of it, I'm not sure how many stomps will actually happening and how much, like, if it's a secure match, maybe you're trying out more DPS rotations for the NYXL, for instance, and mess around a little bit. Try to build the confidence of some of your designated more benchy players. Maybe you lose the map in the process. I don't see it though.
I was going to say, I could see this being a little bit deceptively close in the sense that NYXL may try a lot of weird stuff. Like
possible.
They may just go, you know what? Let's just, let's see how these players look. Let's, put them in different roles. Let's put them, or not roles, but like put them on different heroes than we normally would. Let's, maybe let
Who are you? Get in there, get some game time. Yeah, totally. That definitely could happen.
Let's see if Jonat can play without using his E.
Yeah, right.
Let's give him a controller. Let's see what happens.
It's got to be that kind of a change up for me to really budge on this. Like if it's New York B versus Boston Uprising, yeah, maybe this game's a little closer, but I still think New York wins.
New York B still beats Boston Uprising. But it goes from a 3-0 to a 3-1, right?
Maybe they take a map, right? There's a chance.
Take a point, maybe.
Yeah.
Sorry, Boston fans. Not going your way on this one.
Yeah.
Best of luck to you, though, in the season. Just not the way you want to start, I don't think.
Nope.
All right. Match number 6. LA Valiant versus Vancouver Titans. Joe.
Isn't it 7?
7, yes.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not counting.
Match number 7. Joe.
Give us a percentage.
This is like 65, 35 Vancouver.
Wow. Okay.
I think this is still Vancouver. Yes, I am glowing about Valiant. And I have my opinions slightly changed on them. Yes, I have Vancouver losing to the Gladiators, but I think that's a whole different kind of caliber opponent. I think Vancouver still kind of brute forces this as much as I think that Valiant can do a whole lot with, can kind of squeeze blood from a stone with this roster. I don't know that they can compete in terms of just like on paper mechanics, on paper skill, even if Vancouver's just like not having a good day. It's a tough ask. I think there's still an open possibility for maps to be taken from Valiant, but I think I'm pretty safe to say that Vancouver takes this.
What's really interesting to me is that the odds here for NYXL versus Boston were 84-16.
Yeah.
Odds here are 86-14, which I think
doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense, right?
Even if they factored in preseason rankings, I don't think anyone didn't, or not a meaningful amount of people had Boston above Valiant. Valiant was better last season. Like Vancouver was better than New York. Maybe they favored in matchups, but even then Valiant beat Titans to end their lose streak. There's nothing to go on to say that Valiant is less likely to win than Boston in their matches. So for me, 30-70 or 25-75. I think Valiant. I just think Titans is going to start pretty good, and
same.
But those percentages just make no sense to me. 14% is really, really low.
That's really low. Yep, I agree. All right, last match of the week is going to be the San Francisco Shock versus the Dallas Fuel. I'll move them all for you. Don't worry.
Another 3-0 and a handshake.
Yeah.
I don't like it. They have everything going for them, but I really struggle to see how they win.
So, and to use the percentages again, 81 Shock, 19 Fuel. So they're saying the Fuel have a greater chance of beating the Shock than the Valiant have to beat London, or the Uprising have to beat NYXL.
90
that's 90-10.
Yeah.
I think if there was,
95-5.
I would love to see like Gladiators. I think if you put Gladiators against the Shock here, I think I say a lot of the same talking points where it's like we've seen Shock struggle immediately in the past. Day one, this is the best chance for you to beat them. I think you could squeak it out. Dallas is not that team though.
Sure.
I think if you beat Shock, if you beat one of these top 5 teams, you get to it early where things are very creative, very chaotic. You can sneak out wins, whereas in the midseason over the entire marathon, it's tough to be able to pick those off. So that's kind of again where I'm at with Gladiators Titans. Unfortunately, Dallas is not that kind of caliber team.
Like if actually anything happens where Dallas gets close, I want to get these fans like in a room where they just hit the right frequency to time travel to me sitting in my A-levels exams and cheer me on so I can like ace this. And I'm not a medical, like now a brain surgeon or some shit.
This is not how it works.
This would be fantastic.
Testing is not an adrenaline-based performance.
It would have to be that way. Because they would also have to find the node that increases IQ, like just like not IQ, but performance.
Yeah.
Sure.
Then to make this work, yeah,
it would be pretty dope. I will say, like from a fan perspective, I think this would be fantastic to see this level of an upset at home. Like that'd be crazy. Like you're blowing the roof off that joint. But unfortunately, that's not gonna happen.
You know what adrenaline also makes more likely? Heart attacks. Amazing.
So, what if we all severely underrated the Shock's non-movement off season? Only adding hands. And
I mean, yeah.
What if like 6?
It's hard to upgrade that roster though.
I mean, I don't disagree with you, but just like, let's play the hypothetical for a second and just say like all of a sudden every team in the top 5 that improved, you think Atlanta Reign, you think Philadelphia Fusion, you I don't know if you can
I think NYXL's kind of stayed around the same.
Yeah, they
picked up some interesting pieces.
Yeah.
They've made some stylistic moves.
Like,
hypothetically,
what if we just like see Shock just tank here?
Then flip the table. We have to reset. If Shock lose even 3-2, I think then it's thank God for my power rankings.
We have to delete episodes, I think 60 to 72, 73. Just gone.
That's tough.
They're just gone.
I really struggle to even like let's think of hypotheticals that could happen, like if the crowd really does impact them and they just feel completely like just invigorated to beat this team, and Shock just completely crumble under the pressure and they have all the scrim time and Shock's PCs don't even work. Even then, Shock on a horrible day, their C-level game is enough to beat Dallas at their best. Like that's how good the Shock is, at least on paper. We'll see come match day. But
Super is just sitting there with like a little notepad and he's just like writing W, Q, E on a paper, hands it to the referee, and he types it into the game, and it's still 60-40
victory. Yeah.
Like
that one gets a real clap. That one's good. That's a good Yiskism to go out on, I think, because it is time to get out of here. Week 1, 4 days away. Can't believe it. It's been fun. It's been a fun offseason. This offseason was
looking forward.
I think it was a little slow at first, but especially I think January was really fun to make some content and watch all the movements and everything like that, and hear about the scrims and everything else. So we will definitely be watching come Saturday. as you should as well. Definitely do let us know what you guys think about and want more from the preview. Again, week 1 previews are really weird because we don't have like, imagine what next week's previews are going to look like once we get to see Dallas or the LA Valiant, right? Imagine how much different and how much more, I think, interesting those conversations kind of become. So keep that in mind. But if you're like, oh man, I really would like this piece of information, or whatever. We've been working really hard. Again, thanks to Eric bringing that spreadsheets. I think the visuals were really helpful. I really like talking about the odds too. Like, not like talking about the odds, but just like having that there as like an anchor. Like, let's anchor this conversation to a point where people can actually make money off of. And then let's actually talk about these matches from our perspective. I think that's kind of fun as long as we don't focus on that too much. But do make sure to let us know. I think we're gonna have a conversation this week and see if it makes sense to have 2 episodes of Tactical Crouch each week. So and just a little bit shorter, doing like a preview and a post view rather than trying to cram it all into one. Especially like you saw today, we're at an hour 55. So we will, I guess, see. In the end, all things considered, the format going into the 2020 season is very unberechenbarkeit, and we haven't really landed on something that we think is the best yet. So let us know what you think, and with that, I think we'll get out of here. No new patrons or 5-star iTunes reviews, but a big thank you again to Battle Crab, Made, Pin, Lulshin, Charlie Ellen, Audio Compass for supporting the show as our patron producers. If you like the show, go to patreon.com/tacticalcrouch. We've got a lot of great different perks and things there that you can sign up for. Leave a 5-star iTunes review, and we will say your name on the next show and thank you. And Joe usually gets real cute about it, so it's definitely worth doing. And then also, you just sub right here to the channel. You can sub right here to twitch.tv/KickedTripod, get some cool Twitch emotes, and also get access to the first 2 tiers of Patreon perks, including access to guaranteed playtime for our game night, which we're probably going to have coming up. I don't know if definitely won't be next weekend, but maybe next Friday. I think we'll look at and see. So we'll just have to see how that all works. Other than that, Yiska, I know you've got a pretty big week planned for you, sir.
Yes.
What's going on?
So I have planned. Tomorrow is probably going to be a bumper piece. I thought an interesting angle. We'll see how people like it. Then I'm getting into a Scrimbox Stock Exchange, of course. I promised that one. Juice is flowing, the pulp is thick. I can tell you that. It's definitely more substantial than it was last year. Otherwise, I'm trying something for the match days where I'll maybe not exactly in the style of the Scrimbox Stock Exchange, but like in a fun way, we'll recap the matches that happened. Because I know people don't watch all the matches because it's so much, and then once we would hypothetically get to China or Korea or whatever, if matches happen there, they're pretty hard to view for US viewers, right? Like they're at bad times, so I think there's an audience there in trying to just read. And I think I'll try to make it as entertaining to like even if you watch them, you can recap them. I'll play around a little bit with the format. If there's no audience for that, tough luck, and I'll move to something else, but we'll see.
Cool. Joe, what about you, man? What do you got coming up?
Much in the same way that Yiska has a bumper piece, I, Shocker, have a leave piece coming out. Kind of capping off his narrative going into the season, kind of crystallizing it and giving everybody kind of, something to kind of hold on to and eat. That'll be up on GG Intel as I do every season, well, at least the last 2, but I plan on making it a a consistent thing in the off season. As we inch closer towards the 2020 season debut, we crack open the vault and we open up some of the letters to the future fans, and that'll be all plastered all over my Twitter. So if you are interested in looking at some history and kind of looking at how we thought of teams back then, or how we thought of players previously in other seasons or even other eras, check that out.
Awesome. As for me, you can find me everywhere at KickedTripod. We're going to be doing a ton of stuff, and this is actually kind of a call to action. I doubt that there's very many people left here anyway, but if you are still listening to the show, if you are an avid Overwatch League watcher and want to help us find clips for Overwatch League so that we can use it for some B-roll for the show, I really want to, during the season, have some kind of cool highlights and things going on. Not that Joe, Yiska, and I aren't the most attractive thing about Overwatch League, but just that sometimes it's fun to watch highlights and plays and things too, rather than for talking heads. So we're going to be doing that. So if you want to be a part of helping us put together those clips, I've got a Dropbox set up, and we're just going to kind of organize and load clips into there, and hopefully it'll help make the show a little bit more enjoyable and fun to watch. So if you want to be a part of that, yeah, go ahead.
What we can also do is, like, Discord currently has a channel called Fun or Interesting Clips, and if you don't want to, like, you know, go through like signing up or whatever, I think it's also fine to just post clips in there, right, that you found interesting during the games, and then we'll figure it out there.
Yeah, we'll see with YouTube gaming. Yeah.
True.
Right. So
not wrong. Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see how all that works. But yes, I think that we'll probably learn pretty quickly after the first week or so that, you know, the best way to do it, if like it makes sense for people to, you know, clip it themselves and load it to the Dropbox, or if it's just like, hey, timestamp this map, this match, this map, this timestamp, go kind of thing, and then we go in and do it later on. I don't know, but if you want to be a part of that, you can definitely be a part of it. We'd really appreciate it. And I think viewers will appreciate it as well. So you can contribute in that way. Other than that, though, we're going to be back next week. I believe Tuesday, but who knows, man? We might start that new... If we start this new 2 episode schedule, who knows if the day changes or whatnot. But We'll be here, and we'll figure it out, and we'll figure it out together. You guys are great. Have an awesome one. See you next week. Enjoy the Overwatch League this week. We'll see you soon. All right, guys.
Shoop